All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Essential Credentials Podcast, episode 26. And as usual, I'm joined by Greg.
What's going on, everybody? I'm excited to be here today and talk with a pretty big designer of the 90s. So I think we're going to have a great episode for you.
This is going to be awesome. Yeah, for sure. And then I convinced our third partner in crime, the guy that joined us at the National, Alan. What's up, dude?
Going on, everybody. It did not take much arm twisting to have an opportunity to talk to Gene here today. So, man, I'm on here.
Yes, and of course, Gene is here joining us on the podcast. We're really, really excited. Gene, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm excited. Talk about baseball for once instead of basketball.
Right. And if anybody hasn't watched the previous podcast that she did, she talked mostly about basketball, but Gene is a former designer at Fleer, and everybody that's watching and everybody in our 90s group is really excited because we absolutely love so many of the designs that you and your husband helped create back in the 90s, and we're really excited to find out more about them. So thank you so much for coming on. This is going to be great.
Yeah, it's exciting.
So, Gene, when did you kind of take us through how it all started? When did you first get to Fleer, you and your husband?
I started in-house at Fleer in 1990. And at that time, we were located in Philadelphia. We were at the factory where they actually made the gum and all the candy products that we had.
Mm-hmm.
So it was actually a real throwback. That factory, it was very, it was almost like stepping into the 1930s. It was so old, like it was nothing had changed. So I walked in there, and they had just been purchased the year before by it was a family-owned company up till then from the 1800s. It was like 1880s it started.
Wow.
Okay.
And they had been purchased by another, it's like an investment company. So that company had just taken over, and they were expanding the trading card business, part of the business. Up till then, they really focused on the candy. So they knew they were kind of expanding, and they knew things were changing. And like Matt, you and I had talked about, I had worked in Atlantic City at the time, and that's how Earl and I met. And we worked for an ad agency down there. We did a lot of high roller party invitations.
Okay.
And, stuff for the casinos, and they like glitz and all that. So we kind of worked with a lot of foils and die cutting and embossing and all that kind of stuff. And that's what my portfolio was like. And so they were kind of like, we could see the trading card industry going in this direction. So this would be, perfect. So I didn't actually work on cards right away. I designed, a lot of their candy packaging and stuff like that, because a lot of the stuff is already, by the time when I was started in 90, all the stuff for 91 was already designed and kind of ready to go. They were just starting Ultra. And so that was designed. Eventually I took that over. So the first year that had the marble on the bottom, that was just being designed at that point. And the Fleer card it had like a yellow and black card, had a border, the 1/8 inch border. It was very yellow.
Yeah. We remember. Easy to remember that card, that's for sure.
And so, that's kind of where I was coming in, where things were just starting to change. But they still had the border on the card. Even Ultra had to have that. The reason they have that marble on the bottom is so that you could do a single cut at the bottom, but you still had to, for the border where they bled, you had to do a double cut. But we still had to keep that single cut for a few years. We did that until we could do a full bleed.
Interesting.
So that's kind of where it started. And then they wanted to do Flair. And I had already been working on Fleer and Ultra, and Flair was really the first set that we started from the ground that didn't exist when I had first started working there.
Right. And you had mentioned, go ahead, Greg.
I was just gonna say, Flair was a very influential set. I remember that kind of just made everything stand out. Like you saw that set and you're like, that is something special here. This is like a fancy baseball card, and
Yeah.
it was kind of pricey, but I just remember I wanted them so bad because they were so beautiful and so like thick. It was just like above all the other cards.
I mean, they were a lot of fun to work on for sure. I mean, what they really gave us a lot of leeway. They called Earl in, and Earl and I in, and we sat down, and they just kind of went through. We have the Fleer brand, we have the Ultra brand. Let's, do something. It has to have its own reason for being. It has to have a reason you would pay $5 a pack for. Although today that sounds like ridiculously low, but
Something today.
Yeah, right.
at the time that seemed like crazy amount of money. And yeah, I mean they really gave us a lot of leeway. And then once we it's unusual because at that time we didn't have brand managers. It was just the VP of marketing and actually the CEO. They were very involved. They both came from Scoreboard. They were part of the investment company that came in. I guess they both had worked there and thought this is a underutilized kind of thing at Fleer. Like Fleer didn't really produce enough sets. They knew that they could grow that company a lot. So they came in, they had the background in cards, and they said, this is what we want to do. So when I dealt on that set, we would go in and meet with the CEO and the VP of marketing and show the designs and kind of show them the direction that we wanted to go in. And at that time, we weren't yet doing all these kind of really flashy cards. Mm-hmm. Ended up coming a little bit later.
Right.
So to me, Flair just seemed like we should keep that traditional. We started off with baseball, and they like very traditional cards at the time. And so that's why we kept with that kind of really upscale.
Well, Flair seems very like classical. I guess is the term. It seems like a classical, just old. Like I don't know. It's got a feel to it that just feels royal or classical. I really enjoy that feeling when I look at that card. It brings back memories, of course, but when I look at it, it just feels like a very, I guess the word classical comes to mind because it just.
Yeah, I think that script letter was, added to that. The way that the photos kind of interacted with each other was very soft transition. Yeah, I mean, I like the. We had always used UV coating, and we put a liquid lamination on the top. So it's actually a laminated piece of plastic that they put on the top.
Nice. Okay.
We added the thickness of the card. We tried to look at every aspect of that card. And so we kept it on the much more upscale feel than once we got into Skybox brands, we started kind of going a little crazy.
Did you have something, Alan? I saw that you were.
Well, I mean, just 1993 was such a big year for me personally. I know we're not going to get into some of the sets as much today, but 1993 Flair was one of my all-time favorite sets. I was 12 years old. Barry Bonds just came to the Bay Area and joined the Giants. So I was out there buying everything I could afford. But when you're 12, you can only afford a few packs of Ultra, which is actually my favorite base set of all time. And then, of course, the beautiful shiny boxes over there in the corner, $5, 10 times what I would normally pay for a pack. Right. I managed to peel off, I think maybe $10 plus tax to get 2 boxes. And those are treasures to this day. I don't have them with me, but they're at home right now, where I grew up. And I was just wondering how much of an effect did the fact that the industry was sort of stratifying at that time, and there were all these different premium and sort of sub-premium products sort of feed into the fact that you want to put sort of a fancier, more luxurious looking card out there that year?
It's weird because at that time, I didn't really look at a whole lot of what our competitors were doing. Later on, we used to get cases in and we would open them and really try to submerge ourselves into what everybody else was doing. But I was looking at what we were already doing and trying not to duplicate that. It was trying to be different than the brands that we already had and also give you a value for what I knew they were going to want to charge for that. And also knowing that starting off with baseball, we wanted to keep it very traditional looking. Later on when we got into metal and EX, some of those brands, those people really did not like. But we had these brands. We had Flair, we had Fleer, Ultra, we had plenty of traditional brands at that point. But when we started with Flair, we only had Fleer and Ultra. So we wanted to kind of, give this aura of upscale and maybe elevate the card from what it had been.
I feel like it started at like classical music, and then you guys went into rock and roll.
Well, I mean, that's pretty apparent because Flair, I'm assuming Flair did really well. And then, another thick cardstock card that kind of changed it all. I'm sure a lot of people watching are thinking about this is when you guys released the EXL card, because that took like a high quality, very high end product and added a little extra, if you don't mind the pun, flair to it. Because I think I really remember that set, and I'm referring to this card right here.
Love those cards.
And I remember getting a box of the Emotion, which was a Skybox product at the time, and then getting these as baseball cards. And I remember even just the base cards were high end when you go into the card store. So yeah. I think it would be kind of interesting, Gene. How did that whole set come about? What did the idea for that set come about? Because you were telling me earlier that Emotion was a Skybox set, and when you bought Skybox, you went from Greg. Do you have the 95 card by any chance, just so we can show everybody? So that was a Skybox card, and Greg loves that set to death.
I do.
It's a great card. And then
nice.
You guys went from that to the Joey Cora I showed. So how'd that all happen?
Well, Fleer purchased Skybox in 95. And they were in South Carolina, I think, North Carolina. And so some of the people that worked there were coming up to work at Fleer. We were keeping the Fleer in New Jersey, where it had moved from Philadelphia. And when they came up, they said, "Oh, we have a couple of products in the line." They did not have a baseball license. They had a basketball license. And they said, "We have a couple of sets," and they were going to be bringing they started to show up in the office just so we could see what they were working on. And the first one that I saw, I did see Emotion, but we didn't have a license to do this set. So this was what came up, and this is the back of it. And it was branded Skybox. You could see it. And even on this little part here, it says Skybox. And so they said, "We want to do this in baseball. We don't have a license for it. So we're going to do it. You need to change it. Something that we would, just maybe add a little pizzazz to it. Or would you change it in any way?" And so what we did was like what you showed. We added that we took this little piece here and we moved it over and with embossing and then we took off the Skybox branding. So that particular card is not branded.
Right.
And then we did all the inserts. And actually, I went back and I looked at some of the inserts for that, and I liked some of those. Some of those had like a vellum that was used, like a semi-transparent paper that I really liked, and We can get into that one.
There was a defense, right? I remember that insert. I have one of those. I think the Griffey defense, and those were layered just like this. But there was, what was the highest end insert out of that? Do either of you remember? I think it was
I
one out of
don't know what was seated the longest.
Yeah, I don't.
Our players didn't make it into any of those sets, so a lot of us don't have those. Yeah.
You don't care if it's not your guy. You don't care.
Yeah, sometimes.
This was one we had
Oh yeah.
done. So this has like a vellum. I'll take
Rare
it.
breed.
Rare breed. Yep. And Legion of Boom, I think, is the rarest of the inserts from that set.
Oh, really? I
Mhm.
didn't realize that. Okay, yeah. So I mean, I like this because it's not clear. It's on like a transparent, like a semi-transparent stock. So that was one of the inserts. So once we went to that card, we released that on baseball, and the basketball was already released. Usually at Fleer, we always did baseball first. That was what we started everything with. So every base set, we would start with baseball, and it was good because it was something new that you would see. Except that basketball a lot of times got the upgrades because we would see baseball and we would say, "Oh, it's missing this or that," and then we could change it. So some of the upgrades, some of the things that are different between baseball and basketball was because we observed what we needed from releasing the baseball sets first.
I got a quick question on that.
Mhm.
The Flair Hot Numbers basketball obviously is the venticular, the city, and then the baseball is not. Is that one of those instances where you realize like you'd rather upgrade from the Flair Hot Numbers to the venticular?
What was the hot numbers in? Was that the gold on gold?
The
Gold, flat gold with a gold number?
Yeah, the baseball one had the numbers, but it wasn't venticular. It was just the numbers on the back.
Because we did a few years of hot numbers.
Yeah.
I don't know why sometimes. I mean, I look back and I think, why did we change that from that sport? Sometimes it was just the baseball set was already out. We were working on a new set. I would get the list of names and we would just redesign something, not with any thought in mind.
Okay, so you wouldn't have the baseball card like, sitting on your desk in front of you and coming up with a new design based upon that. You would just say, let's try something completely different. See how it looks.
The base cards were usually pretty much the same, other than we added, like we added the PMGs, like we added the, we made some changes to parallels and stuff like that. But the base cards were usually pretty much the same.
Well, it's really interesting that Legion of Boom card, when you were holding it up, it looks like that card transitioned to this. I mean, there is definitely some similarities between that card and this card with the window and the translucent panel there of acetate. I mean, I feel like that card almost inspired you on this design here. And this is where, as our podcast name states, this is where it all started when it comes to parallels and inserts right here, the 97 set.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't the only insert in that we did that. I'm just looking for this other one. Oh, here it is. We did these two, Exquisite, this was later. This was in the EX Century. So it's almost like we went back to that.
Yeah.
Pretty similar. So then the next year we go to do EX, and we wanted to go from this and the baseball card that you had shown to. We decided at that point that Fleer was going to be more traditional brands, and Skybox was going to be more of the kind of flashy brands, maybe design driven, technology driven. We did more, stuff to the Skybox brands than we did to the Fleer brands. We kind of wanted to give, like we always said, the reason for being. So Skybox and Fleer would not kind of, you would have different people collecting the two different types. I'm sure some people collected both, but we really thought of it as two different types of person.
You were putting them in different directions.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to know who was our audience, our target audience, and kind of Skybox skewed younger, maybe less traditional, definitely more basketball kind of driven person. So when we got to the next year, we did have a brand. We did get a license for baseball, even though it's not written here. And
Right.
we decided this was going to go from. This was going to be the first Skybox brand that we really kind of pushed that envelope of what is the Skybox brand going to represent, you know, something a little bit more flashy and stuff. So we took that plain stock, the blue stock, the gold, you know, the red stock, and changed it out to be etched foil, changed the color, put different skies in, put the clear in, you know, double stamped it, you know, added all the kind of bells and whistles to it. And then we wanted you to know it wasn't really going to be anything like the year before. So we put it in a package that really kind of brought that to mind.
Oh yeah.
Right.
So when you open it up, like this one is open so I can pop it up, the basketball one I have. But when you pop this up, you know, this is what you would see on the shelf. And so you really could see this card.
That's so cool.
That's gorgeous.
You know.
So you would go in there and you would not be, you know, because if it was a traditional collector, they might have collected this first set. So now it's kind of like, well, we should really let them know that these are very different. And so the packaging was the first thing that told you that. And then the cards themselves were very different, which I really like that year. I like that set.
Really quick before I forget this question, Matt mentioned this to me, and I feel like our guys would love to just hear something quick about it. He mentioned that you proposed one of ones pretty early on, and they said no to it.
Well, it's weird because, you know, one of our brand managers, he says, you know, if one of one was his idea. And I totally agree with that because he got it into the very first set. Actually, we didn't even have brand managers when Earl and I used to say, like, they were like, well, what can we do to make collectors want these? Like, remember we were putting the Ultra Gold medallions, one per pack. So it was like, oh, you know, that's a way to, you know, really get them to open each one to buy different packs, and they can get one per pack, and you get something great in each pack.
Right.
And it's like, well, is that too much? How do we then? So then we started putting in like rare and rare inserts. And then at one point, Earl and I were saying, well, maybe Fleer Ultra this year should be, we make one case of it and we say, who, you know, one case of Ultra and then sell it to the highest bidder.
Wow, that would have been crazy.
They're like, well, I would save a lot of time. So, not on my end, but on their end. So, but I mean, we used to joke about stuff like that. But at one time, I wanted to get an artist to do, because I used to like to use artists whenever I could, artists that I admired. You know, I would use them for background art or whatever. And so I wanted to get an artist to do maybe a sheet, maybe for an insert that was like a 10 up or 12 up. And we would actually cut the piece of art and you would get one, we would only have one card. You would actually, that card would be on that piece of art. So it would be an original piece of art with the player on it. And I was like, but we would only have one. I mean, they're creating a piece of art that we're cutting up. And they were like, you know, maybe, well, let's put a pin in that and maybe do that later. So we never did that, but I think that would still be kind of a cool idea to do.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. Well, Alan, I could see that you're getting ready to ask, because we're talking about EX. I think this is a perfect time to, you have literally the perfect question, I think, for Gene. But since we're talking about EX 2000, go for it, man.
Are we going to jump right into the actual brands? Because before we do that,
Yeah.
I was hoping you could give us a quick overview. This is a very general question, so take it wherever you want to. But what was your design process like? If you could just sort of walk us through for a couple of minutes what it was like to sort of get the okay from the brand manager, conceive of the idea, decide how you were going to select photos, whether you had to mock up designs, whether you drew them out on a piece of paper and then printed out, what it was that you did with the prototypes, how you went to the printer, whether there were snafus that would often crop up at that point, and then when would you decide what kind of packaging you wanted to use? Like, where in the process did that happen from beginning to end?
Yeah, let's start with this too, Gene, since we're talking about EX. Could we kind of focus on how this all came to be, including the packaging? Because I think the packaging is extremely unique with that.
Well, at that point, we were in 95. So by then we did have brand managers. And actually, like, sometimes the brand manager would be the brand manager on EX baseball, but I would have a different brand manager on EX basketball.
Okay.
They weren't a brand manager in the traditional sense that you always worked on EX and you always worked on Ultra. It was, they would switch it up. It would kind of get boring for them, I guess, to always work on one brand. So it was kind of nice to switch it up. So they would, I would get a kind of a briefing, and it would just tell me what the set was going to be about, how many cards were going to be in it. I would kind of get a list of who was in it. That could change, but that didn't really matter to me who was going to be in it.
Okay.
How many inserts there were going to be, if there was a parallel to it, that would be in there. And then the inserts, I would get the seating ratios of how often they were going to be seated per pack or per case or whatever. And so according to that, I would determine if I had time to design it in-house, or if I would give Earl a lot of the designs or whatever. So we would sit down and I would kind of go over all that, and we would determine. I kind of had a budget, but I didn't really, I knew that I had, like on the lower seated cards, I could do something more spectacular because I could, we only had to print so many of them. So maybe I could use a stock that cost a lot of money, or, do a perimeter die cut or something like that. So once we knew the seating ratios, Earl and I would usually sit down and go over the set, who was going to do what. And then if I was designing it or if Earl was designing it, we would set up a time when we were going to meet. And the designs it depended. Like if you were working on something and you had a lot of ideas, sometimes I could have 8 ideas from Earl or myself for one insert. Sometimes it would be 2 or 3. If you thought you hit on it right away, you didn't have to go through, doing 20 different designs. So at that point, we would sit down, we would go over the designs and start talking about the technologies. It was like, oh, this really lends itself well to the stock that I found. Usually when you're designing, you weren't thinking about the final product. You weren't thinking about the stock or what color foil it was going to be. It was more the layout of the card.
Okay.
And then after that was decided on, then we would start getting into what technology we thought we wanted to use, or what, maybe printing technique or something like that. And then the brand manager would come in and we'd say, the designs, this is what we like. This is what we kind of ended up on. These are printing techniques that we were thinking for it. And if they had an issue with anything, they would bring it up then. But usually it was just kind of like, okay, yeah, I like that. Or maybe we should save that for Skybox. That's a little bit out there for Ultra or something like that.
All right.
And then I would make up a sheet, and it would, it had the front and the back design of the card, and it would have the seating ratio, like maybe quantities or seating ratio, like I didn't really get into quantities. That was production, but I would have the seating ratio on there. I would have all the printing techniques. I would kind of pull out what color foil, exactly what foil I wanted. The die cut. If I wanted to see a sample, I would say I need to see, a sample of the die. Like maybe, actually, I just found this the other day. This was so I might get, like, if they were doing an etched die, like this was for, I forget what sets these were for, but they would send me a stamp. And
That's
then
the All Galactic team, I think, isn't it? Did I get that right?
I don't know, because I don't see maybe it could be.
I think it is. I think it is. Yeah, that's great.
They would send me a stamp like this, a sample, so I would see exactly what I was getting. So that would go to the printer, and I would actually sit down with the printer, and they would, I would say, this is what we want, what we're looking for. Sometimes it was something new they had never worked with. So they would say, we're going to go back and try to work on it, and then I'll send you samples as we go along to see what, how things are working out. Sometimes they had done it, and it was, it was just a matter of, this is what we're looking for if they had any questions. Then the pre-press house, like we sent all of our pre-press outside. So somebody would pull all the photography. I would then send it to our photo editors, and they would either go, in the case of baseball, we actually had photographers that would go and shoot all the baseball games.
Okay.
Basketball, the NBA provided all the photography.
Interesting.
Football, we had to have photographers go out and shoot everything. So, it depended on the league. But in baseball, he had people going to all the games and shooting everything. So he would look at the design, and then he could pick the photography based on that design, whether or not they needed to be vertical or horizontal or whatever it was.
Okay.
And then at the same time, then I would meet with the pre-press people, and then they would take the design and they would actually place all the photography in it. So I would get the photos from them, send it to the pre-press person. They would outline all the players, or if they needed to for a particular design, and go through all that. And then they would send me pre-press. They would send me, like, actually I have some, if I had pulled that out. They would send me some proofs, and I would look at it and I would mark it up, whether or not I didn't like the color of, maybe something was running too yellow, or the scan wasn't right, or the player wasn't placed exactly where I wanted them to be, or whatever. I would mark all that up. They would go back, make all the changes, send me a new set of proofs, and then we would make the films, send it to the printer, and then either Earl or I would go on press, and when they were actually printing it, and we would, because when you're on press, they could, it could run too blue, too yellow. They're trying to match the proofs that we send them, but a lot of times it didn't. So I was like, take the red down or whatever until we got it to where we wanted. We would sign off on it. A lot of times we would have to fly. It was mostly in Wisconsin that printed the base sets.
Okay.
So we would fly out there, go on press, do all that.
Wow.
And all the sheets, and in order to not get to have stuff not be stolen or lost on the way, we would weigh the paper, send it to them. They would have waste or whatever, and they had to send us. So when we would weigh it afterwards, and they had to send us the waste.
Wow.
And we would know, if we're getting what we were giving them.
Wow, that is interesting. I never would have thought that.
Good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, because in the beginning, the cards weren't as valuable, but as we were doing these things that were more and more processes, they were becoming more and more expensive to produce also. So we didn't want them walking away. So, they would send that back. We would send it to another place where they would actually cut them down. And the cards would come, in big, I guess, shoots. And then we actually collated them and put them, well, no, we would send them to a collator, and they would put them in the right order. So in other words, if one was going to be seated one per 348 cards,
Mm-hmm.
they would do all that. They would have the 348 cards, and they would have one of these cards. And so we had a collator that actually collate the cards like that.
you guys collated them based upon cards, so you'd have to do the math. If it was 1 out of 24 packs, you would then multiply that by the cards per pack and then put the insert in there.
Right.
That's awesome to just think about that happening. I know you guys are nerding out about that too, because we all get caught up on odds, and we're not going to go into that because that's a whole nother bag of worms. But that's awesome for me to visualize. I don't know about you guys, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And they would come to the factory, and then they would put them in. We actually packed them out at the factory. So they had machines that would then take them and put them into the packs, and then put the packs into the boxes. So that all happened at Fleer, but everything else before that happened.
So you literally had like groups of packs before they were put into the packs.
Yeah.
In their boxes.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you were at the printer and they brought out something like this,
Mm-hmm.
was it your vision that it would look like this at the end, or did you have to, like, when you saw the printer produce a card, sort of change the contrast or the grain on a photo?
Well, in that case, I didn't see them until they showed up. I would see like the paper part of that, where you have the player printed.
Right.
I would see that on press.
Okay.
But then it would go out and be die cut, and then it had to be mounted. And so I wasn't there when they were doing all of that.
Mm.
So I would see each piece separately, and then I would see them once they were all together. But by the time we were doing those cards, I pretty much could visualize what it was going to be like. And the designs, if you looked at, I don't have any of our flat designs, but they were pretty close to that. So sometimes I would get them and I was like, oh, this turned out way better than I anticipated. I mean,
Right.
I don't remember ever getting something and being like, not really liking it, or not like that. Because usually like we said, we would get samples of each little piece. But by the time I got it, it was actually a final card before I really saw it, like you were just showing.
What was the time frame from like the idea to a presentable like proof or sample?
Not very long. I mean, I wish we had more time. When I started at Fleer, we were doing Fleer and Ultra, so you can imagine we had 8 SKUs probably. By the time I left, I think we had 50-some SKUs. So, by the mid '90s when we bought Skybox, we were putting out a lot of different brands, and we had Series 1, Series 2. So I would say by the time I got a briefing from the brand manager to the time it was on press, you mean?
Just something presentable that you could see like almost an end result, not necessarily like.
It was probably a couple of months. It was probably like 2 months because, you have to send it out to the pre-press house and they have to outline every one of 300, 400 players, place them. I have to view them. So by the time, from the time that we would get the briefing to the time of design, it could be a week or 2.
Hmm.
And then the design to the first pre-press stuff could be another week or 2. And then making changes is another week or 2. And then you have to print it and collate it and get it into packs. By that time, it could be a couple months.
Well,
By that
I don't
time,
know.
already on to 2 other sets have gone by.
Right. You mentioned that in the other podcast too.
Yeah.
I think we're all here at this topic right now. I mean, we're talking about the '97 set. Where do you have any kind of idea where obviously the brand manager had to come up with the credentials and essential credentials, right? The name was decided upon, but when you were going through the design process of that set, I think, Greg, you had a great question too. Was there ever any thought of the credentials or the essential credentials being the green card or the colored cards, and then the inserts or the base being the silver? Like how did you kind of go through what those were going to look like? Because I imagine you had all 3 versions, kind of like a pre-production version, and you designed out ahead of time, right?
Kind of. I mean, we would design the base set first, even before the parallels, and not even really thinking about the parallels, because you didn't know what base set we were going to end up with. So if I had 5 or 6 designs, I wasn't thinking 5 or 6 parallels for, I wasn't thinking of a parallel for each of those. So maybe Earl would come in with a design, we would approve it, and then we would say, okay, this has 1 or 2 parallels. What can we do with it that makes it really different, that you got something different in the pack, but doesn't take a whole lot of changing of the films, changing of the dyes, trying to use what we were using already for the base set. So in that instance, we, instead of overprinting the foil, which we did on the base sets, we lay down the foil and then overprint all that color. We changed it out to that patterned hollow foil and then just eliminated the overprinting. So that was like an easy fix. Still could use the dyes, we didn't really have to do a whole lot.
Okay.
I don't know on that one. Do we have like does it say essential credentials on it, or?
It says credentials, and then the one, if it's essential, it's got essential credential.
Yeah. So in that case, what we did was that was just a black plate, so that was an easy fix. We overprinted that over it, but it was just a single color black. So that would be the new film. Would only be that black would be the difference.
Okay. Interesting.
Because sometimes we do that like on the gold medallions. It says that on the back, so we would have to have all new 4-color films made. In that instance, we only had to have 1 color films made.
Wow.
So now, we're trying to walk that line of getting what we wanted, but staying within the budget.
Right.
That kind of brings up a question I was thinking about. In the Ultra, you have the gold medallion of the inserts. Did you guys ever think about doing parallels of inserts for any other sets?
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, it's funny that we didn't really do that. I mean, there were a few over the years that we've done multiple versions of, but not really. I mean, I think we could have probably done more with that, parallels of inserts, but that was never on my briefing, so.
Okay.
I never.
Yeah, the Ultra has the gold, like you have a hitting machine, and then you have the gold medallion hitting machine.
Right.
But it seemed like Ultra was the only thing that did that. Everything else, that was just the insert.
Yeah.
Oh man, those are beautiful.
Of that. Yeah, I'm not sure why they didn't do that.
Well, I mean, kind of great question, Gary. I was thinking that too, but kind of sticking with the EX set, Gene, we were talking about out of all the base cards that have ever been produced, it sounded like you were telling me when you guys went from 97 to 98 EX 2001, that this base card was probably the most challenging or probably the most complex card that you ever designed while you were there. Is that correct? Like as far as base cards go?
Yeah, definitely as base cards go, for sure.
How many layers is this card again? How many steps was it again to make just the base of that?
I was trying to think about it. I think that it took 8 processes to make that card. And some of them were had to be hand done individually. Each sheet had to be individual.
Wow.
So, I mean, the way that started out was, like we had talked about, it had the border on this card. And just like with Fleer, we always wanted to get rid of that border with the Fleer base cards.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that we didn't like the borders, it's just that we never want that kind of restriction. We were always just trying to be like, well, if we wanted to, could we get rid of that? So when we went to the printer and I started talking about like getting rid of that border that was really holding the card together, they were like, I really don't know how we would do that, so they started looking at processes and I really worked well with this one printer and he came up with the process of how we could do it. We could show these. Like these were some of the designs that were never used, but like just say maybe what a comp would look like. You can see on this actually has 3 layers. There's the plastic layer. This is a second layer, the silver. And then this is a 3rd layer. So I don't know if you could see that. But
Wow.
There's 3 layers on this. So, this is what we show them, what we wanted. And then they eventually were able to figure out how to do it. And yes, it was a lot of hard work on their end to get it done, but they did.
Wow.
Those cards, one of the things that I was talking with Mike, this guy from Upper Deck that asked me to go down and speak at the conference. He and I worked together at Fleer, and he reminded me of something that I've totally forgot about, that that plastic was so thick and the cards were so thick between the two layers that when we were cutting them, they had to heat the room up
Oh,
in order for the plastic not to shatter, so that the room was really warm, so that the plastic was actually a little pliable.
That is awesome.
recently there was some discussion about some of the plastics have maybe yellowed a bit.
Yeah.
And so there was a question brought up recently about, did you guys have any variation of a yellow credential or a yellow card, or was that just like yellowing of the plastic?
Yeah. And in fact, I keep in touch with the person that printed those, who worked at the printer. And I asked him about it, because some have really yellowed and some are just slightly yellowed. And he said that it's the UV coating
Okay.
that's yellowing.
So just to be clear, there wasn't like a sample or a variation of that. It just yellowed over time. Okay.
On the Dunkin' Donuts,
Yeah.
those got really yellow, and I've seen people put on like rare gold version. And
Right.
Yeah, all right. Yep.
I'm really trying to make lemons out of lemonade. Like, your cards have yellowed and you're trying to say it's a gold version, but
The same thing is happening with baseball, where they say rare yellow variation, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking it looks like it just yellowed from the aging.
good. And I was wondering, do they, like, when they grade them?
Yeah,
When-
Alan, you actually have the same. He and I went for the same card. So
Yep.
here's the non-yellow.
Okay.
I love this card so much, by the way. Just want to shout you out for that. It's one of my favorites. And then Alan, literally, look at his.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. Yeah.
It's like a parallel.
It does. Yeah,
Yeah. You have the gold version.
you do.
When,
Talk to printers about it. You know, we were, flying by the seat of our pants. We were really just getting sets out and trying to get them produced the way we wanted. And so we weren't thinking archival. We should have been using archival inks and coatings, and like they do, if you're an artist and you're making prints of something, you're using archival inks and papers and all this stuff that has no acid in it. We weren't thinking like that. We were thinking immediate. It's not that we were saying, oh, who cares? It's just that it never even occurred to us to think such long term about these things.
yeah.
Okay.
I can see that.
Well, that
It
answers
would have been hard to have imagined that these
Right.
cards had as much impact on people as they ended up having. I mean, we're going to have these until we pass them down to our children and grandchildren, some of these cards. So they're going to be treasures and sort of family heirlooms. And there's probably no way at the time, in the moment when you're under an incredible crunch, that you would have been able to sort of think about the reverberations and sort of what impact it would have for generations to come.
I know, it's crazy. I mean, plus, I look at some of these cards and I'm like, I cannot believe they held up as well as they have. Like the EX, all those layers and all the processes that it went through. I mean, the fact that they've only yellowed, to me, is amazing.
Yeah.
I look at it as
I've got a quick question. Somebody brought it up in the comments, and it is a great question. Let's say you've got a print run of 100. How many extras are you making for like damaged cards or just, I don't know, extras?
I'm not really sure we had a department right in Fleer that, we could go to that people would send their cards to for replacement cards. But once, you can only do that for so many months. And then after that, they no longer could replace them. Once that happened, those cards were supposed to be shredded.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that happened, but I hear people say, well, there must have been replacement cards. But the replacement cards, if they were numbered, would not have any numbering on them.
Okay.
It's sitting there, and if somebody sent in a number 15 and needed it replaced, they would take that one card, send it to the printer, and the printer would renumber that card 15 because it had to be replaced with the exact same card.
Mm-hmm.
So they would shred the damaged one and replace it with a new numbered card, but the same number.
So if it was numbered 5 out of 15, they would shred that and make a new 5 of 15.
Right.
Okay.
That's it's crazy to think about because Gene, you and I talked about those Flair legacies, and so we can get into that another time. But yeah,
Well, you
really
know,
a bummer about
it
those.
became more of an issue later in time. Like early on, people weren't really sending in replacement cards as much.
Mm-hmm.
But there were times where they would say to me, you know, you designed this. Don't do any more black edged cards, please. We're getting a lot of these cards back. And, you know, of course, I don't like to be told no. But,
Yeah.
you know, you try to take that into consideration, that kind of stuff.
I think before we wrap up talking about the EX set, I mean, I have to ask this question. I think we all have thought about this. I mean, when the essential credentials were being made, first of all, the numbering for them is really, really cool. And our very first episode, Greg and I talked about how that worked because a lot of people don't quite understand. But did you and Earl have an idea of just, you know, the legacy that those cards would carry on? I mean, those, especially the 98s, I mean, those are some of the most desired cards in the hobby right now but not just basketball, but for baseball too. I mean, the price gains that we've seen on those cards have been tremendous. And I'm sorry to bring up a sore spot, Alan, but they really have taken off beyond any of our wildest dreams. And none of us collect Tim Salmon and already have our cards. So, but I mean, honestly, when those were being made, and not maybe 97, but 98, 99, did you have any idea just how popular and the legacy that those would carry on?
No. I mean, I remember getting a sheet sent to my office because all we really did, well, in that case, we stripped out the 4-color that was over the player, like that panel that's the foil onto the right there.
Mm-hmm.
That on the base set would have been overprinted with the color. So we stripped that out. And actually, we probably used the same 4-color films. We probably overstamped it instead of understamped it. So that 4-color is probably underneath of that foil. And then we switched out the plastic. So it was a really easy change. And I had that plastic sitting around in my magic book for a long time. And it was called a glow edge. And I just always loved how, you know, when you held it, it has that glowing edge to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really love that too.
Let's see, Alan, kind of pick it up a little bit. Yeah, it's okay.
When I switched out the plastic, I was like, oh, I have this really cool plastic that I know when you open the pack, you're going to know that is not like the base color.
It is. I can see it now, Alan. That's really good layering. Yeah.
So, I mean, I loved it when it came in. I really liked how it turned out, but I had no idea it was going to be. You know.
What was the decision to do pink and yellow and greenish? Like,
Well, it came in a just a very limited number of colors, that stock.
Okay.
And those just seemed like the two that were going to really stand out in the pack, you know, when you got it. There was like a blue, but it didn't, the edges didn't glow as much. I just thought,
I'm kind of curious. I mean, were you in that process of watching them get seeded in? Because, you know, the credentials aren't listed as a card that has odds, right? They're kind of just thrown in randomly. I just am wondering right now, do you have any clue if the credentials were supposed to have odds, or what was the decision on saying randomly just throw them in?
When they're numbered, you can't give the odds, but then you can figure out the case quantities.
I gotcha.
The person seeding them knows the case quantities. So they knew how many cards back each one had to go in order to make it into that many cases.
Okay.
I'm not privy to that information.
Right.
But there are case odds in it actually, but they would never let you know once they're numbered, because, you know, people can figure out anything.
Well, we've geeked out about that so much. Like we have a few inserts that were seated at very high ratios. I mean, you could talk about the Cooperstown, Destination Cooperstown. You know, we don't know how many of those were made. Yes, thank you, Greg. But they were seated at such 1 out of 720. We would love.
I have my little.
You're saying nice. we geek out all the time. Like if we knew how many cases were made at EX 2001, we could figure out how many of those were actually made. I mean, like that card is so rare. We kind of wonder, like, how come that didn't get a serial number? It would have been like so cool. You know, we actually did an episode on that.
Yeah, I don't know why. You know, it doesn't make sense. Like they probably should have a serial numbered them, but
right.
You know, I don't know what I didn't make those decisions unless I did something that I was like, oh, I have this really cool technology. Maybe we should do a set based on this that's going to be numbered or something like that. But,
nice. Okay.
And I didn't, you know, if anybody had an idea for a name, you could just talk to the brand managers and they would, you know, maybe put it into a set.
That's
When
cool.
we were designing, come up with Circa. That said, Earl and I actually came up with that name for the brand itself, which was unusual because we collect antiques. And when you have an antique, you're like, oh, that's circa 1885 or circa. So I like that idea of saying circa 1999 and that's circa 1985 or whatever. So that's how we kind of came up with that name. But like somebody else, you know, we were just talking about Dunkin' Donuts, and that was somebody was sitting outside of the brand manager's office and said, "What about?" He was drinking a Dunkin' Donuts cup of coffee, Dunkin' Donuts, and they were like, "Oh, that's a cool idea." So they put that in the set, and he wasn't a brand manager; he just came up with the name. So,
I always had the idea that Dunkin' Donuts like sponsored.
yeah, no.
No, you didn't get in trouble, huh?
Oh yeah, we did. I mean, they couldn't do anything. The product was out there, but they sent a cease and desist and said stop. And we're like, okay. Yeah, everything we were going to produce was out there. So
that's awesome. Well, I mean, just to kind of transition us, you talked about how sometimes you came up with the ideas, maybe for the name especially, and I think I definitely before we run out of time, we have a little bit of time. We have to talk about, I think, the most iconic 90s card beyond Credentials. Credentials, I think, is number 2, but I think the set that created our most iconic cards, it came out in 98, and that's Flair Metal. I think I would love to spend the last little bit. Yes, Greg, the PMG, there it is.
Yeah.
Greg's a brat, and he has his player for this guy too. So for this one, yeah. But you know, Gene, I think it would be really fun to just talk about. You know, you mentioned earlier how that set, and I actually have a sample sheet here that the Flair Metal was not a set that was well received. Correct? Here's the here's the sheet that I have.
I asked you if you had one of those. I have one of those sitting here.
Yeah, it came with my set that I bought, believe it or not. Yeah.
Well, Metal, you know, we were owned by Marvel, and Metal started in basketball. It was out a couple of years in basketball before it ever came to baseball.
That's right.
Like we had, like baseball doesn't have the one where it has the embossed name down the side, right?
Say that one more time. I don't think so.
Basketball.
Yeah,
let's see, what year was it? 95, 96 basketball.
okay.
That had like a textured background.
Okay.
And then if you look at 96, 97 basketball, that had like an embossed name going down the side. Those I don't think were produced in baseball.
Okay, here we go. I'm gonna screen share a picture of the basketball card, just so people can see from 95, 96. So this is the year prior to when our baseball set came out. So
yeah, I'm drawing on those.
Here's the basketball card you were talking about, Gene. Correct?
No, I think that's an insert.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here's the pictures of the metal. Are we talking about? Anybody see the base card here?
I'm trying to see on your thing. Let's see if I can enlarge that.
Because here's the packaging right here. Yes.
Yeah. See, that was Fleer
Okay.
metal. Eventually,
Okay.
Skybox metal. But
Okay.
it started out as Fleer metal for a couple of years, and it used
Okay.
M logo. It was like a big M.
Okay.
But I think the first time it came out in baseball was actually used that logo that has the rays around it.
Yes, and we're gonna show that too, because the idea of that logo you were telling me was so fascinating. I absolutely love it. So, can you take us through how the logo kind of was created? And I'll show the pictures.
The logo for that was was something that we had a department upstairs that did non-sports cards, that did entertainment cards.
Okay.
We had a logo, and Earl saw that when we were going to do the 97 baseball, he took that logo and he adapted it, and he wanted it to look really like it was forged out of metal. So he thought, why not just really get it forged out of metal? So that's what, so he sent away his drawing, and they created that, they forged that out of metal. And actually, here's a piece of it. Like, you look, those pieces are separate, like the piece on the left.
Okay.
So that's kind of how big it is. It's thick.
Jeez.
That's just a little tiny piece of logo. It weighs a lot.
Wow.
So he had it forged, and that was used on packaging. And so, like, when you use it larger, it's nice to have like a, have it look more like the metal that you really wanted it to look like. Actually, here's the one from
Right.
metal.
Nice.
So he had that forged out metal, and we then sent that off, had it photographed. It was used on the packaging, sales material, the cards and all that. So when we started in baseball, that was the first year that we did baseball. We wanted to utilize some of the illustrators that we had from Marvel, because we were owned by Marvel. And actually, before that, we had done a few illustrations, and Matt, you and I had talked about that. I had shown you that the illustrations that were used for that hardball.
Yes. Yeah.
But so we had used illustrators before that a couple of times. But in this case, we thought, it might be kind of fun to do something where we had been stripping out the backgrounds and all for inserts. We thought, why not do a whole set like that and really just give them carte blanche to do whatever the illustrator could think of. So I had sent you, I don't know, do you have the stuff that I sent you with
The video, that other email never came through, unfortunately.
the illustrations that I sent?
No. The only things that came to me were the sign that you sent me. So we'll definitely have to show that, unless you have a
I
hard copy there.
illustrations here, but
Okay.
I don't know.
as like a 12 or 13-year-old, those Marvel backgrounds,
Yeah.
like that was like the pinnacle of what I could collect. So as a 13-year-old, I absolutely loved the metal baseball, because it was like cartoons, animation, baseball. It was all of my favorite things were absolutely combined in one card, and I was like, I found my heaven.
Good, I'm glad. We had talked about this before, but we tried to, because there were so many cards in the set, and because the illustrations were going to take so much time, we used each illustration twice. So I would send the illustrator, this and this, like an outline of the player, and be isolated, but they were in a similar position, So if they were batting, I would send two of trying to be in a similar position. Like, here's another one, like this one, and this one. So we were trying to be able to use the same illustration. they would then send back something like this to me, which was their idea, their concept. And then I would either approve it or change it. And if I approved it, then they would go and do the final digital art. And then once the digital art was done, we would have dies made and all that to each of those. So, I mean, that set, yeah, there was a lot that went into that set. Not technically a lot, like as far as the printing process went, like EX, but
So what
front time.
what was the transition from like the 96, 97 where you guys were doing like the cartoon animation to 98 where you were doing like photography background?
Well, okay, so once we did this set, we wanted the next year to actually be on real metal. And so we had samples made from the previous artwork, and these are on tin. So this is a matte version and this is a gloss version. And so we thought, let's go to the real metal that year. And then I just didn't like this rolled edge. I didn't think that that this technology was where we needed it to be yet. And, you know, actually we did find that for molten metal, which I was really happy with. But so once we were looking at this and it wasn't working out, we thought, you know, it's kind of nice how that set, you look at each card as its own book. You know, it's not usually a base set. It's just the same over and over and over again. So it was kind of, we wanted to kind of carry that again. So we decided to go to the cityscapes. And back then, it wasn't as easy. Like if I were to do that now, it would be so easy. I could find photography of every city in a million different ways. But back then I had to find, like Earl found some CDs that had stock CDs that had cityscapes and stuff. So
That's pretty cool.
did a lot of that research. And so some of them, if you look, they're still on like planets and stuff because we couldn't find enough city photos of that particular city. Some of them are very kind of obscure.
Well, I have a quick question about the finish on the card because my 98 set that I bought came with an A-Rod sample.
Mm-hmm.
And the sample looks like this. And it has that kind of rough texture that the 97 and 96 set had. I don't know if it's going to grab it. You can see it has a little more texture on it.
Yeah.
Whereas the finished card ended up being a bit smoother. Was what was the reason for going away from this and going to a smoother texture? Do you know?
I don't. I have a feeling that it had to do with the cost of the die. But if you look at that, like the portrait, the small little portrait,
Yeah.
the block was flat on the one that has the etching. And then
Yes, it is. That's right.
into the portrait, so we kind of flip flopped it.
So I can show that off real quick if everybody wants to see that. So here's the sample, and you can see it's smoother. But then on the non-sample, yes, the portrait is like the platinum portrait cards.
Right.
Almost.
It's etched. So
Yeah, that's cool.
But
I didn't even notice that.
you guys got to do like individual like design for, you know, like this is Barry Sanders.
yeah.
It's so you got to really like pick the specifics of a player and put something like, you know, like that's just so unique to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Greg said
It was hard to
there's a
find the images. That was the only difficult part of that.
Right.
You really have to know like a little bit about the player, I guess, or some type of like environment for each person. Did that take a little bit of research, or did you have
Well, we were trying to really find something to do with the city that they were playing in. But if we couldn't, then that list, we would then kind of research something about that player or put them on the planets or whatever. You know, we were trying to just fill in really for cities that we couldn't fulfill.
Alan, did you have something you wanted to ask, bud?
I mean, I just remember Greg selling that card to me, saying, "Well, there's a lion on it." That is very cool.
Well, I think the Ryan Sandberg, somebody posted that, and I was looking at completed sales just to see how these have gone up. that card sells for so much because it's Ryan Sandberg. His name was Rhino, and he's got a rhino that looks like it's chasing him in the PMG, like in the card. So the PMG is like so spectacular. I don't even like Ryan Sandberg, and that card just completely blows me away because it's such an awesome idea, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny.
That's awesome. So the base cards come out, and then I have to ask, when it came down that you were going to do PMGs, that technology that you used, Greg has his. Greg, would you get the PMG out again just to show everybody?
Yeah.
Where did this? Can you take us through the process of where that came from, Gene? Because it's one of the coolest technologies, printing technologies I've ever seen.
Oh, here, I'll show you. This was like my foil Bible of the time.
Okay.
We would, again, we tried to use the same dies, so we just switched out the foil, really. And so that was a holographic patterned foil. And so if you look in here, there's 20 different.
Wow.
That page. And here's the next page. So I would go through here and I'd, pick out.
Looks like Pacific Prism.
Sometimes we would custom make them. Like that particular one doesn't seem to be in this book. Oh, actually it is. It's right here.
Is it? Oh, can you give us a close up?
Oh,
See,
man.
you can actually see that I pulled one of the swatches off of that. So
Wow, there it is.
it's right here.
That is awesome.
Wow.
Very cool.
So
Wow.
it was just a matter of switching it out. And I probably had samples made of that with a couple maybe other foils to see which one would work best with 4-color under it and over it. I mean,
Okay.
so that's
Wow.
It's just
It's mind blowing to meet the person who made the executive decision for something as iconic as that. That is just crazy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a Greek goddess just looking at all the possibilities.
Oh wow.
What can I do? I could do this. I have 15 different variations. What am I gonna do?
Yeah.
Amazing.
well, it's crazy to me because when I talked to the people at Upper Deck when I was at that conference, it seems like it's much more of a process to get something through. They really did give us a lot of autonomy. Like we were able to do what we wanted to do, and I just feel very lucky about that.
Well, that's what creates a unique card. If you've got executive giving you what to do or giving Nixon everything or vetoing it, then you're going to get what Topps is doing now. You got like a refractor, a green, a purple, a tie-dye, and then every year it's rinse and repeat. So when you got somebody like you, and you got a crew and your husband, you can kind of create what you want and just create these once-in-a-lifetime inserts that aren't being done nowadays.
Yeah, I don't understand. It seems to me like you could still be doing that, but
Right.
they're really into the autographs and the jerseys, and they think that is what is driving it. So that's kind of what they rely on. And plus, I feel very lucky that Earl worked outside. Like I worked in-house, and I had to deal with a lot of the technical part of things and getting things produced. And he could go out and do a lot of research and really just kind of play around and look at what trends are happening in design, and even what we looked at surfing magazines or skateboard magazines, or what are kids who are into gaming, what kind of graphics do they like, just because that kind of opens you up to new ideas in cards. No, it's not cards, but it shows you, it gives you ideas for cards. So like I see that now, there's so much out there that I think, oh, that would make such a cool card.
Yeah.
I don't think that way.
Right.
I mean, honestly, stuff like
He was able to do all that research, so it was good. He was able to really.
If that stuff existed right now, I would probably be more into modern cards.
Yeah.
But as it stands, you're kind of the queen of the '90s, and I'm sucked into it. So
Right. Well, I think too with that 98 set, Gene, you really had a lot of leeway because this was an insert we were talking about. Like Upper Deck was not doing anything like this, the platinum portraits where the card was inside the card.
Yeah.
I just thought this was such a neat idea, and you really got the freedom to play with something like this, where the card comes out, it's very thick stock. I mean, there's so many cards from the Metal Universe sets and the Ultra sets that, you could tell that you had a lot of leeway to do, to try some unique ideas.
Yeah, I mean, it was really nice that we were able to do that kind of stuff, and I don't know, they just really I was looking at I liked when certain things, like I had the time metal.
Yeah, those are beautiful.
And in that instance, we did them in basketball also.
Mm-hmm.
Slight variant in it from basketball. I was looking for the metal card that I had here. The next year with the rivets.
Oh, the linchpins.
Oh yeah, I have linchpins, but that's it.
Yes.
Yeah, love those.
We all love those. Yes, we do.
But the year that we did metal with the rivets, it was 99, I guess. That was the last year that we designed it. I really like that set too. I love how deep that embossing was, and Earl did the art. He designed that and did the artwork for that. And some people complain that when they stack them, they don't. They want to fall over because they're all like because the embossing.
Oh, okay.
I really like that set.
Yeah, you can definitely tell that you and Earl stopped working on Fleer Metal after 99. And I'm not trying to say anything bad, but the set took a big step back. And so when you told me that when we were talking the first time that you had helped design the Skybox stuff after that, it really stood out. Those Fleer Metal, I mean, they're so iconic, and it definitely shows with how unique the designs were. So yeah, I'll never forget seeing the Joe or the Pudge Rodriguez card when he's in the tank with the water in 96 and he's got his glasses on, his helmet's coming off. And my dad and I was telling you that story. I mean, he grabbed my arm like, oh my gosh, son, look at this card. Like even he, who wasn't a collector, was just, being a comic guy, like Greg was saying, as soon as you see those cards, they just hit you, and that I will never lose that feeling, that memory.
I'm glad. I mean, because like we said, it wasn't for everybody. Not everybody liked it, but there's other sets, collect those.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
we don't have that. I mean, I had that video that I had because we did some cool stuff that we had samples made, but just never made its way into the set. And those would be kind of fun to revisit and see if somebody would want to produce them.
I think we're all curious about something. I want to make sure to get this question before we ended things. You did the PMGs in basketball for the 96-97 set. Obviously, we were talking about that Jordan that sold for quite a large number. But was there a reason why that was not tried in baseball the year after? So like when 97 baseball came out, obviously the basketball had been so successful. Or maybe it wasn't back then, but was there a reason why the 97 set didn't have the PMGs? Is that's completely out of your hands, I'm guessing?
The 97 set?
Right, because the 96-97 basketball had the green and the red PMGs. Was there a reason why you didn't try the PMGs in 97 and wait until 98?
Basketball that had that.
Okay. Gotcha. All right.
96-97 was the diamond pattern before like there was even like clear baseball had metal.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
Metal baseball came out first, and then we, they were nice. I like the silver versus the, but we opened up cases of product of competition, and we were kind of like they wanted to go to a numbered parallel rather than the non-numbered.
Right.
We went to the numbered, then we knew they were going to be really rare, and then we thought, okay, we have to kind of up the game for that.
Okay.
Then we put the red and the green in that. And
you talked about how you use your wedding ring to help design those, right?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that baseball kind of got ripped off on it because they were the first ones out.
Right.
But I do like, I mean, I still like the silver ones. This just
From 96. Yeah.
in the reds, apparently. On being numbered, I think, really made all the difference
Right.
in those.
It is kind of fun to think about what could have been too. We think about that with the 97 cards or even the 96s. Like if there was a PMG of the Joey Cora, that card from 96, I mean, geez, that would probably be my favorite card of all time. But it is kind of fun to think about that. I mean, do you have those thoughts too, Gene, where you go back and you think, would have been fun to try this with this set,
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think like the platinum portraits in basketball where we had the laser die cutting. I think, why didn't I do that in baseball? I mean, eventually we did. It was in multi-metal, those sets, but I really like that platinum portrait. It's kind of wonder why, when that turned out so well, why even the next year, why we didn't use it. I don't know.
Right.
Because by then, we did 40 other sets, and I wasn't even remembering that I done that the year before it. But when I look at it now, I think we probably should have carried some of that stuff over that was so successful.
Wow, that's awesome. Definitely fun to think about. Greg, how are you doing over there, man? Doing okay?
Good.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think just because, geez, we could keep talking and talking because we originally wanted to cover a couple of other sets, but I think it would be fun to save those for a part 2 interview because we have so many questions, especially about Flair and Flair Ultra. But I thought it would be fun, as a lot of our viewers know, we like to end with pickups. But instead of us telling you what we picked up, because I'm sure it's like, okay, great, that's great, guys. It would be fun for us to show you a card that A, we can kind of gush about, but B, maybe give you a minute or two to talk about where the design came from. Does that sound like fun?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great. Well, who would like to start? Alan or Greg, do you have a card that you wanted to show? Greg, you want to go first?
No, let Alan go.
Let Alan go. Okay, great.
This is going to be out of left field. I thought we were going to talk about Fleer Ultra, which just holds a special place in my heart, especially in 1993. But one of my favorite cards, maybe my favorite Barry Bonds card of all time, is this card. It's from 95 Ultra or 96 Ultra, actually. And you're more aware than anybody about how these were seeded and how there were redemptions. And I think that there was a promotional card that came out maybe ahead of this set with this Bonds. And I want to know to what extent you sort of built the set around maybe this picture because you knew it was going to be, the sort of the centerpiece card of that set. Sort of what, anything you could tell me about what went on in your mind about how to design this card would be amazing.
Well, I think the design of that card was really based on that stock. We had gotten that wood stock and hadn't used it up to that point. Since then, we've used it a few times, but so yeah, I remember that doing that. At the time, we used to do the marketing material. We didn't always do it, but back then we did. And did you see the marketing material for that then? That has the promotional piece on it.
I think I've seen it on the internet, but not
like a kind of a thing, and that is actually stuck on there. And that was one of the inserts on there, and there were a base card was put on there. But as far as the design goes, I think if I look at it, it's very simple, but it's based on that stock. And
gorgeous. I don't know what kind of grain or what kind of filter you put on the actual photograph itself, but this is a work of art to me. This is incredible. There's some sort of treatment you did to the photography itself that just makes it look.
Well, you'd be surprised. It's really because of the stock. We had to lay down like 3 hits of white, so that how when you paint wood, it'll actually have grain coming through.
Right.
So we had to lay down like 3 hits of white, and I think that's what is giving that illusion that something was done to it.
Interesting.
And then lay down the 4-color over top of it.
And did you have any say about how it was going to be? Which card was going to be the promo card to promote this set, or
actually the marketing department would have to get a contract with each of those players to be able to put them on a. in that case, because we were doing more than one promo, it could have been if you're doing 4 different cards out as a promo, then you might have not need a special license, but most of the time we had licenses with them for that particular set. And they would, we had to use those, but I didn't have any say in that. You have one that says the promote, because I think it said right across it.
Across, I don't have
Yeah.
that. No.
Yeah.
Nope.
I'm sure I have one. I could send that to you.
That's
I would
cool.
love that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because I remember that coming into the office, and I had a bunch of those, and it's the whole, it's like a whole. We used to go through spend a lot of money on the marketing side of it, and then towards the end, we were just sending out sheets. This is what's going to be on it, but in the beginning, we would always send out the promo cards, and some of them, like for the EX, some of those were really nice. I love them. They're like, once you pull it out, it wound up being like this big, and they would actually have the card mounted on it on the cover. They were really nice. I should have pulled those out because I know I have some of those.
Now we have things to talk about next time we have you on.
Yeah.
We can talk about those kind of things.
Card.
Yeah.
Autograph of the designer of the card. Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways.
I knew we'd get Alan fired up about collecting again.
Yeah.
Here we go. It's done. Done deal.
So here's mine. Matt mentioned that you really like them, and I do as well. I've got 2 examples of football and the baseball, and here they are.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So there's another wood card.
Yeah. We've got Destination Honolulu and Destination Cooperstown. So could you just talk a little bit about your thoughts on these and the process?
Well, Destination Honolulu, obviously we were trying to play off of the Hawaii theme, right. Tiki Gods, and there was a company. It was House Fonts. It was a company that made really unusual fonts at the time, and they actually made the font that's on that card. It looks like a kind of a Hawaiian font that's on there, and they had a CD of these Tiki Gods, and so I was like, Earl and I talked about it, and we were like, that would be really cool. And then the fact that we had done that wood card, we're like, have them actually be on the wood. We wanted the wood to actually look like it was stained, the color on there. So we tried to do like a lighter, like a brown on there rather than. So we wanted it to kind of look like it was stained, that coloring. And then, the fact that we could get a wood card and die cut. I was amazed that we could get that in our budget, but
that's gorgeous. And just as easily, this thing, the luggage ticket, I love this card. This was one of my number one wants for a while. I finally came across one.
I don't know why the blue chips so much. Like everybody tells me how bad that blue chip's on there.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why. And I was looking at it and I was trying to think, is there like a coating on it that somehow, it's got a very matte coating to it, and the player has a gloss coating to make it of it.
Yeah.
We really wanted the ticket to feel like a ticket. So it wouldn't have been a glossy ticket. It would be like a matte finish like that.
So when those were inserted, they had the string on them, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that pack, was there less cards in that pack, or was it?
No, that year of EX, there was actually a front card and a back card, so you couldn't feel.
Cardboard. Yeah.
There was a cardboard, and it was actually a little oversized compared to the card. Okay. So it was, when you think about the 2 layers of the base card, you could actually feel who you might have if you really wanted to feel through a pack.
Yeah.
So that's why I was able to do that, because I knew you wouldn't be able to feel it if it was in there anyway. Normally, I wouldn't have been able to do something like that.
Okay.
Well, like a lot of people cut off their cut that off.
No, I shouldn't have done it.
Why do you do that?
Well, it wouldn't go in the magnetic because I was telling you actually the the string indents on the blue part. If the string is still attached and you put it in a top loader or even a magnetic, it'll indent on the top and push into the card. So I kind of did it for precautionary reasons, but yeah, it did come with it originally.
Like, what if you send that out to get graded? How do they put that in a grading?
I don't know the answer to that. I'll ask everybody that's watching in the chat. Has anybody ever graded one of those? I would love to know.
They take off grading for not having that on there.
Hey, that's a great player you got right there, Gene. That's a great card. But I'm actually curious about one more thing before we move on. The yellow on that, is it just me, or has that yellow? She's got the whole set. Holy smokes! Has that yellow faded, or was it printed a very light yellow originally? Because I feel like that card, I've seen them darker on the yellowy part. You know, the actual rest of the card. Is that just me, or
it was light like that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. You have the whole set with you?
I do. I have a whole set here.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Wow.
Oh my goodness gracious. Woo. That's amazing. Oh wow. Isn't that awesome that the designer is also a collector? I think that's the coolest thing.
Well, when we would get one of everything we designed. So we would always get two because Earl would get a set and I would get a set. And we always thought, we have 2 kids, let's save everything. But, over time, something has got to be too valuable. So some of the kids are not going to get what we designed. But and then we never got numbered sets. So I don't have any of those. Like a lot of times people are talking about certain numbered sets. I'm like, oh my God, I've never actually held one of those cards.
Right.
Weird.
Wow. That's amazing. That is amazing. Well, I'm gonna cheat because Greg, you're gonna know where I'm going with this. For 3 years, you designed these, and I feel like they're some of the most unique inserts that were ever made in the 90s, and they come from Ultra. So I would love to know who and how your design process went with these. So here's the 97 Diamond Producers. It's got as you know, that kind of felt finish to it. And then my favorite, I don't know, it's so tough to choose, but this one, the layers on this, the 98
right.
with the diamond, and I'm not getting it to reflect real well in the middle there. And then this probably is my favorite, the 99, because all the shiny technology going on here and the gold foil on the bottom. But yeah, a lot of us in the chat too, they've been asking about the Diamond Producers, especially the 98. But was this kind of like a playground card for you, or not like a playground, but like a way for you to test certain things out that you didn't do anywhere else?
I mean, not really. Like, I think it was more the seating ratio that, because it was a longer seating card, then that's like, we talked about hitting machines too. And that was a set that went year to year, and Wave of the Future. There were certain things that we got to do year after year, and I think some of them were more successful than others. Like some of those Wave of the Futures were a little out there.
With the water inside there, the water inside the card. I remember that.
Yeah, I had one of those.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I don't know. I had a few of them here, but it's funny. Usually, if you look at hitting machines, a lot of those, they have the gear and they tend to look very similar. But most of the time, each year, it was just a fresh start. We didn't really try to springboard off of another year or, last year's was really great. Maybe we should do something really different. It was more the seating ratios that determine all that.
Which is interesting because you say that, and the seating ratios for the Diamond Producers always stayed at 1 out of 288. But then, like the hitting machine, the 96 version was the hardest to find, whereas some of the other ones were a lot easier to find. So it's funny how the seating ratios, they decided to make them different for the hitting machines, but they kept them the same for Diamond Producers.
Yeah, I like that first year that you're holding up there. The other one, Alan. The other one. Yeah. I mean, that's more based on design than technology. Like it's just printed card with a foil. But I like the design. So sometimes you had to really work with design when you knew you weren't going to be putting a whole lot of money into embossing, or the one that you held up that's the sculpted embossed on the plastic. I mean,
This one right here.
yeah, it's amazing that is able to even be done, like that you can emboss the plastic.
Right.
Yeah,
Maybe that
it's
was
amazing.
speeded up when the embossing came down on it.
It's these cards are absolutely incredible. I mean, it's so hard to pick a favorite, but I remember when I first got back into collecting that this was one of the first cards I told myself I had to get, and I would love the whole set of this. I mean, it's probably impossible now with the prices of the big time players, but that technology, it just is. All of these are so unique from those years. They really stand out.
Yeah, it's truly amazing. This one in particular, I just have to say that a lot of different companies and a lot of different sets attempted the hollow foil glittery shattered glass look on acetate, and it didn't go well. This is the one where it all came together and looks amazing. It's not preordained that this is going to work. There's a lot of cards that actually came to market that don't look nearly as good as this, that sort of had the same idea.
And I recently found an embossed plastic card that we did really early on that is hardly embossed at all. You can see that there's an embossing, but I don't know how that really, the sculpted emboss is crazy on that.
Oh, it looks wonderful. Well, Gene, we've really enjoyed having you on. Thank you so much for taking the time out to join the three of us. It's been kind of a dream of mine to get you on here since I saw your interview with Josh, and it would be great to have you back again for a part 2 so we could dig a little bit deeper on the Flair and the Ultra set specifically, but just go into more detail. I know that there was so much that we wanted to ask and cover, but the best part was that you had the chance to tell a lot of stories behind the cards, and I think that's what a lot of our collectors in our group and the 90s collectors enjoy hearing. So thank you so much for that.
Okay. Yeah, it was fun. It was different because with Josh, it was like it was less interactive in this way that you could all tell your stories too. So that it was a little different.
Yeah,
my interview with Josh.
We run things a little differently. So I love talking baseball. I'm so glad to have you on to talk baseball. The basketball was super informative, but I felt like we could take it a step further. So I'm glad that you were able to join us.
Okay, thank you.
It really was such a treat. Some of these cards, 1993 Ultra in particular, I'm fixated on that, but it was so important to my childhood. It had an impact on me. It stays with me to this day. It's my favorite baseball card. To be able to talk to the person who masterminded it, it's a dream. So I really appreciate your time coming on with us.
Thank you. I wanted to say one thing. Like after the interview I did with Josh, I was reading some of the comments, and one person said, although this is negative, I probably shouldn't say, but he said, it's good to put a face to the person that made me stop collecting.
Jeez.
Traditional collector, but so many people came to my rescue. Like they were all writing, like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah,
so
I could not feel more.
It actually made you collect rather than.
Yeah.
So good. Then I've kind of evened it out. I got somebody out of collecting and somebody.
I think, though, if I'm being honest, some of those people that thought that back in the 90s, like, what is this Flair metal nonsense? I'm here to collect, bordered cards. They are coming back because I think a lot of them are seeing the modern designs and saying, this is just not doing it for me. I don't need 50 parallels of the same card. I mean, some people like it, and that's great. But I think a lot of us and a lot of our people that we see coming into our group are coming back and having that reaction of, wow, these cards are so unique and so incredible. And I'm hoping that this episode especially can maybe springboard some people back into digging a little bit deeper into some of these cards because they're truly unique and wonderful to look at. And I think some people missed the boat back when you first released them, for sure.
Yeah. Well, you have to take chances. Like they are taking chances. They're saying, okay, let's try all these different parallels. But not on every set. Like, you try that and try something else. And, it's kind of cool that we were able to do all that stuff and they just allowed us to do it.
Well, it has to make you happy to see that the popularity of these cards has come back in the way that it has, because, we're not just talking about the credentials and the PMGs in our group. A lot of times we'll get posts, and we've posted, cards that cost us $5 or less, but the design is so unique, and we post it and show it off, and we get a nice discussion going. And I think that is what makes the 90s so special, is how unique all of the designs are. And you and your husband certainly helped with creating that for us. So it's awesome.
Thanks. I'm glad. Fun.
Awesome. Well, I want to say thank you to everybody that stuck around and watched. We had a lot of live viewers. Thank you for all your comments, and we will definitely look at asking a couple of those questions in part 2 of our interview. But again, thank you everyone for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Okay.
Take care, everyone.
See ya.
Bye-bye.